Thank you all for having me today. I'm very happy to be here, and as my mom introduced, it is because I'm happy to be anywhere. I was mostly homebound for about 2 years and then took another 1.5 years to fully recover, and I appreciate the prayers you sent. It's a very isolating illness, and just knowing people were praying for me, but just even remembering me was really important. So today I'm going to share with you a story from my recovery, just one day really, 1 hour. And it's one of my favorite stories, and it's a story about risk. And so I'll just begin. There's a parable in the Bible, and you're probably familiar with it, called the parable of the talents. And in that parable, Jesus tells a story of a master who's going away on a trip, and he leaves with his servants his possessions, talents. It was a type of coin. And to the first servant, he gives 5 talents. To the second servant, he gives 2. And to the third servant, he gives only 1. And in that story, when the master returns after many years, the first 2 servants go to the master and say, "Master, you have given us these talents. While you were gone, we invested them, we traded them, and we're returning them to you doubled." But the third servant who had only 1, understandably, he was nervous and afraid of losing that only talent he was given. And so he dug a hole and he buried it underground to keep it safe. And when the master returned, he dug it up and he said, "Master, I kept your talent, I kept it safe, and I'm returning it to you." The master in the story gets very angry and punishes this servant, and uses some kind of harsh language actually too. Growing up, I had this radical Catholic priest, and he did not like this parable. In fact, I think in one homily he said that he didn't think Jesus even said it. And you can understand why, because there's these aspects about it that don't quite fit with what we know and think of Jesus. But my illness taught me to look at that parable in a different way. In my illness, I had a very tiny amount of energy every day. So small, it was taken down to that 1 talent. And the repercussions of going over this amount were excruciating in my mind and my body. The symptoms were devastatingly painful. And so after months of this, I developed a mindset of scarcity, because out of necessity, I wanted to prevent that pain and suffering. And so I miserly doled out my little bit of energy on only the essentials. And my world got very, very small. I became buried to keep myself safe. One of the few things that brought me pleasure, maybe the only thing, was I could get myself outside and lay on a lounge chair under my trees, and I didn't have to think, I didn't have to talk or move. All of those things, even thinking, takes energy. I could lay there and look at my trees and watch the birds. And I was in this cage, but I could observe that sense of freedom that the birds had. Well, little by little, weeks turned into months, turned into years, and I slowly found ways to build back a little bit more. I got a sliver more of energy, not a lot, but a little bit more than I was dealing with. And I was writing out in a journal one morning, and I thought, I think I formed a habit of practicality out of necessity that I needed to break open. I had built up this armor around myself to protect myself, and I needed to take out that little talent, unbury it, and invest it in a different way if I wanted to start recovering. And so I thought, brainstorm, what would be a way to break this habit I formed? I'm hoarding beyond necessity now. How am I going to invest it? And I came up with 3 words. I don't know where these words came from, but these were the 3 words that came to me that morning. I wrote out, I was going to start choosing, when I had options to do the risky thing, the impractical choice, and make the whimsical decision. And so I wrote those 3 things down, these 3 new habits, I wrote them down. The risky thing, the impractical, and the whimsical. And just 2 days later, after writing those 3 words down, an errand arrived. And I needed to take an official document with a prepaid label and drop it at FedEx. And I thought, I think I can do that. Now, I didn't have a lot of energy. I was only leaving the house at that point, maybe once, maybe twice a week. And I thought I could do an errand that was about 30 minutes long as it didn't involve too much walking. And that was a big deal because I had, up to that point, had really left the house about once a month with great difficulty to go to the chiropractor. And so I imagined it, and I thought, I can do this. I felt proud that I could do a little something more for myself. So I Googled, where's the closest FedEx place? And it was Walgreens. It was 4.6 miles round trip. And I thought about that, and I thought, I've done that before. Let's imagine it. Let's imagine what it will be like. And I thought, those stores are kind of big, but you have your passenger seat laying flat that if you need to afterwards, you can take a rest. And I imagined more, and I thought, if there's a long line, you have that folding stool, and you can bring it, you can sit on it, and you can rest while you wait in line, and it will be okay. And those corporate places, they often have loud music playing. And the sounds, those stimulus, cause reactions in my body, but on my keychain, you have earplugs you can put in, and that will calm things down. So I thought of all these different protective things I could bring with me to keep me safe. I had a mask I could wear because I felt awful every day, and I didn't want to get any kind of illness, COVID or another illness. And so I thought I can do it, but the more I imagined it, I thought, oh, there's those bright fluorescent lights. And I think of Walgreens, and I imagine the person at the counter is probably an employee who doesn't really want to be there. They probably wouldn't even look me in the eye, and just nothing about it sounded fun. And you might think, what's the big deal? Just take it to Walgreens. But when you only have that one single talent of energy, you want something a little more interesting. So I Googled, maybe there's something else a little farther away. And there really wasn't. But, well, there was a place out in Forestville. I'm in Sonoma County, out in Forestville, and it had 5-star reviews. And I thought that was a little bit unusual for a shipping center, because who is going to give a review except someone who has a problem? And so I kind of piqued my interest, and I clicked on it, and you know what? It had 5-star review after 5-star review. There was someone who wrote the review like a poem. It was an ode to the owner, Heather. And I thought, what is this place? And I click, and in the photos, you know what it was? It was an old-fashioned gas station converted into a shipping center, notary, and gift shop. And I looked at it, and I thought, that's the kind of place I want to go to. Why can't I go to a place like that? And I felt envious. Scrolled back to Walgreens to check the hours. And then I thought, my brain was working, right? Why can't you go to Walgreens? Why can't you go to Forestville? There's nothing stopping you from going to Forestville. And I remembered those 3 habits. Do you remember what they were? I was going to take the risky option, the impractical thing, and do the whimsical choice. And I said, this is it. This meets all of that criteria. It's risky because the longer I stood upright or sat upright, the worse I felt. I felt like I was going to pass out. My heart would start racing. So I was gonna have to sit up a lot longer. And it was impractical because it was 18 miles round trip. I was gonna spend 4 times the amount of gas. And most of all, it was whimsical. Because I wanted to see what in the world is happening at this place out in Forestville. So I just thought, this is it. This is my chance to take a new step out and break and create these new habits. So I imagined it all afternoon, because one of the things in the long COVID is your system overreacts to all stimulus. So I wanted to make sure I was going to be completely calm and show my body that we could do this. The next morning I woke up all ready for my big adventure out, and I looked out and it was all smoky. And I knew it wasn't a fire in Sonoma County. There was a really big fire burning north of us, but the wind had blown it in. And it was gonna be hazy and it was gonna smell like smoke. And I heard this little voice in my head, and the voice said, today's not gonna be the most beautiful day for a drive. Maybe you should change your plans and just go to Walgreens. But I had been learning about these different thinking patterns and naming them. Stressful thinking patterns that were adding to the stress in my system, and I knew who she was. Her name is the Worrier. And I said to her, good morning, Worrier. I know you're trying to keep us safe. You think that if we stay close to home, we're going to keep and prevent those horrible symptoms that we've been enduring for years. But today, the explorer, she's coming with us, and she's going to keep us safe. And so we got in the car. Me, the Worrier, and the explorer. We got in the car and we started driving out. And we're driving down River Road out to the Russian River Valley. And as you start out, it's just big open vineyards. And I'm just enjoying the view and reminding myself to enjoy each step. And I'm taking deep belly breaths to keep my system calm. And as you drive in the road kind of narrows and big redwood trees come up, because it is Forestville after all. And they kind of squeeze in, the road narrows. And I felt it was cozy, but kind of like a too tight hug. And my body was getting a little nervous. But I just kept doing those deep breaths and trying to stay relaxed and remembering this adventure, this journey, right? And as I turn into Forestville and the sky opens up to a clearing, I felt like this big release in my body, like the pressure was released because I was almost there at this destination. And I pulled into the service station, and there it was, this outpost, this remote outpost, and it was bustling. There was a U.S. postal van unloading packages. And I looked at it, and I looked at that passenger chair that's laying flat, and I thought, I don't think I need to take a rest yet. And there was my stool and the mask. And I look up, and it was just a few steps in, and I decided, I'm going to take off all my armor, and I'm going to go in, and I'm going to go in just by myself. And so I stepped into the store. Ding, ding. Out jumps this man from behind out of it. And he's like a child whose playmate has just arrived. And he says, what can I do for you today? I said, I have a prepaid label. I'm sending something by FedEx. And he takes out from under the counter an envelope and presents it like a magician, folding my materials and putting it in. And as he's typing in my address and details, I say, I came from Fulton today. I thought this would be more fun than Walgreens. And he turns with a little glint in his eye and said, all the way from Fulton. That's a long way. So would you like a receipt? And I said, sure. And he says, let's do it all up right. As if I just splurged on something. He said, you're getting out of here for free today. I said, maybe not, with a little mischievous side. I'm going to look around. Now the whole place, it was no bigger than my bedroom, and there in the corner about the size of my bathroom was the gift shop. and there are boxes all around. I think they were doing inventory. And I step over there, and there's a stool for the inventory, and I sit down to take a rest. And behind me, I hear now the UPS drivers come in, and he's laughing with the man behind the counter. And I'm just enjoying this moment of overhearing their camaraderie. And I look around, and I think, what, like a child, what am I going to bring back from my journey? What treasure to remember this epic journey, right? And there was a tea towel, and there was a mug, and a stuffed rabbit, and there it was. I knew what I was going to bring back. It was a string of 12 stars, felted blue stars, a garland, and I thought, that's what I'm bringing back with me. And I brought the package up, and I set it on the counter, my treasure there. And as the man takes my credit card, I say to him, I'm buying this for no real reason. And he said, that's the best kind of purchase. We all need a bit more whimsy in our life. At the moment he said the word whimsy, my heart jumped. I said, that's exactly it. And I gushed out then, I said, I'm coming out of 2 years of being homebound, and today is a really big day for me. And he said, that's wonderful. Life is amazing. I get so mad at people who forget it. There can be so much going on bad in the world and in society, but every day that you wake up and you can take a breath, that's amazing. And I stood there stunned and in awe, like I had just met a prophet or an angel. And I said, the human body is amazing. Thank you for this day. And he said, thank you for telling me your story. And I turned to go, but then I rushed back and I said, extending my hand, my name is Natalie. And he grabbed my hand and said, hi, Natalie. My name is James. And I went back out to my car and I just sat there. And I tried to take it in. I was probably in the store only 10 minutes, but time had stopped because something extremely special had just happened to me. And I looked over at that chair laying flat, and I still didn't need a break. There's my stool unused and the mask, and there were my 12 felted stars that I was taking home. And I just realized the specialness of opening myself up, even though I was afraid, and offering it out, and how God, the universe, the Holy Spirit had rushed in to provide me with new resources. Now, I didn't magically recover that afternoon. I still use that stool sometimes. I still use the earplugs. It took me more than a year more of dedicated, patient work to fully recover. But that day showed me what I needed to do and keep doing. And so I turned right and went home a different way, out through the vineyards, and I remember seeing this group of crows, sort of playful, I love crows, they're on my card, playfully dancing in the wind, and I saw that I was no longer just observing that flight and that life, but I was participating in it once again. And so today I just invite you to maybe think about what's that thing that out of need of protecting yourself because of suffering or fear that for a while you needed to keep hidden and closed and locked up, but maybe it's no longer serving you, that you might just unbury it, unlock it, open up those doors, and offer it out, and just see what miracle and possibility might be in store for you. Thank you.